You're listening to Dark Rain Chronicles. The rain hides many things, but it also remembers. Secrets washed away, voices swallowed by the storm. These are the stories it brings back, and tonight, you will hear them. 3:17. The digital clock glowed accusingly. A chill trickle of sweat snaked down Leo's neck, cold despite the feverish memory clinging to him. The dream visage of an old man, skin like cured parchment pulled taut over bone, eyes like milky quartz, boring into something deeper than sight. A grip of skeletal fingers, an insistent pressure on his arm, and 5 words rasping through the phantom air. The wiring. You must check it. His pulse hammered against his ribs, a frantic drumbeat in the pre-dawn stillness. The bedroom air felt thick, suffocating, though September whispered cool promises outside the glass. Leo swung his legs out of bed, the floorboards groaning a familiar complaint beneath his weight. In the bathroom's harsh light, the mirror threw back a stranger. Shadowed eyes sunk deep, a face etched with sleeplessness, since Eliza vanished from his life 3 weeks prior. Without her, the house exhaled differently after dark. Its ancient bones, timbers laid in 32, seemed to settle louder, the radiators sighing steam, the wind rattling the sashes like an impatient guest. Every year of its existence felt palpable in the shadows. Sleep was a distant shore. For 20 minutes, Leo stared upwards, the plaster ceiling a blank canvas onto which the phantom face repeatedly bloomed. The wiring. Check it. An inescapable echo. Fine. He finally surrendered to the silence, his own voice startlingly alien in the void. Jeans, a t-shirt, armor against the unseen. The polished wood floor bitted his bare soles. Downstairs, the garage yielded a heavy-duty torch and the familiar heft of his toolbox, its metal handle stealing warmth from his palm like a premonition. A square panel in the upstairs hall ceiling marked the way. Leo tugged the cord. The folding ladder descended with a shriek of protesting metal, obscenely loud in the slumbering house. A fine cascade of dust motes rained down, shimmering in the torch beam he aimed upwards. Tangled skeins of cobweb draped over fossilized insulation. The air that drifted down carried the scent of time itself, naphthalene and decay. 2 years he'd lived here, and never once breached this threshold. Each rung groaned under his ascent, a precarious climb into the house's forgotten crown. His head emerged into stifling heat, the air thick as felt. He hauled himself onto the rough plywood floor, the torch beam slicing a solitary path through absolute black. Hulking shapes resolved into forgotten furniture and stacks of boxes, casting monstrous silhouettes. A skeletal rocking chair listed drunkenly in a corner. Beside it, disintegrated cartons spilled faded ghosts of Christmas past. Brittle tinsel, sightless ornaments. Cables snaked along the rafters, ancient knob and tube arteries, their black rubber sheaths cracked and flaking like sunburnt skin, interwoven with haphazard additions from later eras. A tangled nervous system. Leo crawled, the low ceiling forcing him onto hands and knees. Plywood whined beneath him. Glassy fibers of insulation clung to his jeans. Gossamer strands brushed his face. Unwelcome caresses he swiped away impatiently. The light pinned a sudden movement. only a spider, skittering across a dusty beam. He traced the lines methodically, beam inching along the dusty pathways. Old, yes, but seemingly sound. Until, there, a metal junction box haloed by faint, dark scorch marks. Its cover sat askew. Hesitantly, Leo touched the metal. Warm. A jolt, colder than the metal, shot through him. He fumbled in the toolbox, retrieved a screwdriver. The cover yielded with unnerving ease. Inside, a rat's nest. Botched splices. Insulation melted away to reveal gleaming, dangerous copper. A fire waiting for its moment. Wood cried out behind him. Leo spun, the torch beam slashing wildly through the oppressive dark. A flicker, a disturbance in the stagnant air. "Who's there?" His voice, a thin thread swallowed by the vastness. Only the house exhaling, the wind sighing its lonely song. He turned back, hands trembling, as he addressed the damaged wires, stripping scorched insulation, twisting on new connectors. Another creak. Nearer. He whirled again, the light found it. A face. The dream face, rendered now in nightmare flesh. Parchment skin, quartz eyes, but amplified, distorted. The lips peeled back in a smile that didn't belong on anything human, revealing teeth too long, too needle-sharp. Skin stretched like drum hide over impossible geometry. And the eyes. Flat, milky, utterly devoid of pupils. Leo recoiled, crab walking backward, elbow striking the junction box. A shower of angry sparks erupted. The torch beam danced crazily. The entity remained still, head canted at an angle that should have snapped bone. Its rictus grin stretched wider. "You found the wiring," it rasped, a sound like autumn leaves skittering over pavement. "Clever." Leo's throat constricted. No sound emerged. It advanced, not walking, gliding, impossibly smooth, its base hovering inches above the dusty floor. "But finding me," the dry whisper continued, "that changes things." His back hit a low rafter, trapped. It drifted closer, fingers elongating, stretching like warm taffy towards him. "Eliza saw me," it confided, the sound hideously intimate. "She fled. Wise." Eliza's name, a physical blow. "What did you do?" Leo choked out. A laugh shattered the silence, brittle as falling icicles. "Nothing." She possessed sense enough to run. He lingered. Its face hovered scant inches from his, radiating a charnel cold. The air thickened with the stench of decay and ozone. "You climbed," it hissed. "You stayed. And now, a game." Leo swung the heavy torch like a club. The thing moved with preternatural speed, its hand clamping onto his wrist. Fingers like frozen vices squeezed. The torch clattered away, its beam cartwheeling, painting the attic in strobing flashes. In those fractured moments of light, Leo glimpsed the truth beneath the facade. The human shape a mere suggestion, a cloak over undulating smoky darkness. He lashed out with his free fist, punching through its chest as if striking mist. An invasive chill surged up his arm. It drew him inexorably closer, the milky eyes eclipsing his world. "The wires were only ever bait," it whispered, breath like grave dirt. "Such a long, long hunger." A raw scream tore from Leo's lungs, swallowed by the attic's dead air. The entity's mouth yawned impossibly wide, revealing not a throat, but a spiraling vortex lined with countless teeth. The bone-deep cold threatened to paralyze him. He kicked out blindly, foot connecting hard with the damaged junction box. Another explosion of sparks. And in their fleeting glare, the entity flinched. Revelation struck like lightning. He kicked again, harder. Brighter sparks. The icy grip on his wrist faltered. Leo wrenched his arm free, lunging for the box. His fingers closed around raw copper. Agony seared through his hand as raw current surged. The attic flared white. The entity shrieked, a tearing metallic sound. Its form shimmered, buckling like air over asphalt. He grabbed more wires, welcoming the fire in his veins as the light intensified, burning away the shadows. The creature's edges began to fray, to char. No. Its voice, no longer a rasp, now crackled with static interference. No. No. The light became unbearable, a solid wall of white forcing Leo's eyes shut. The shriek climbed to an unbearable pitch, then abruptly ceased. Silence crashed down. He blinked, vision swimming, alone. The torch lay nearby, its beam illuminating only dust motes dancing in empty space. His hands throbbed, blistered red. A violent tremor seized his entire body. He scrambled toward the opening, tumbling more than climbing down the ladder. Back in the relative safety of his bedroom, he snatched his phone, bumbling Eliza's number with shaking fingers. 4 rings stretched into eternity before her voice, cautious. Leo. Eliza, he rasped, throat raw. Before you left, did you see anything upstairs? A pause heavy with unspoken dread, then barely audible. You saw it. Not a question. Yes, he breathed, staring down. But it's gone. I think I stopped it. Are you certain? He wasn't, not remotely. But the word came out anyway. Yes. Another weighted silence. Right. I'm on my way. Don't go near that attic alone. The line clicked dead. Leo remained on the edge of his bed, gaze locked on the square of darkness in the hallway ceiling, where the ladder still hung. Shadows writhed within it, tricks of the eye. Perhaps not. He waited, flinching at every sigh of the old house, every hiss from the pipes. Mundane sounds now imbued with menace. Eliza arrived 20 minutes later, grim-faced, carrying 2 powerful torches and her own tools. Together, they ascended into the quiet dust. It was empty, just boxes, cobwebs, and the silent testimony of antiquated wiring. They worked with fierce concentration, properly securing the junction box, methodically replacing suspect cables, until the first gray hints of dawn filtered through the gable vents. The nightmare ceased its nightly visitations. Eliza returned within the week, reclaiming her space in the house, in his life. The presence never manifested again. Yet sometimes deep in the night, a floorboard overhead will creak. Just the house settling. They murmur to each other, a shared lie that offers little comfort. The wiring is meticulously maintained now, checked monthly with ritualistic care. Superstition, perhaps, but necessary, because closing his eyes can still conjure the image. The parchment skin, the milky gaze, the impossible smile splitting the darkness. And the question lingers, cold and sharp. Was it unique? Or are there others nestled in the rafters of forgotten homes, weaving themselves into dreams, patient predators waiting just above? He doesn't know. He prays he never finds out. But he checks the wiring. Always He checks the wiring. Silence shattered at 2:30. A sound I loathed, a frequency tuned only to disaster, ripped through the dark stillness of my bedroom. My eyes flew open. On the nightstand, the phone screen cast an alien glow. Unknown. With a reluctant hand, I swiped the green icon, lifting the device to my ear. 5 words, spoken by a voice utterly unfamiliar, landed like stones in my gut. I am here. At the door. Male. Deep. Placid. Too placid. I levered myself upright, the sheets clinging damply. 3 days the air conditioner had been dead, and the August suffocation was relentless. Alone. 2nd floor, downtown Chicago. No benevolent soul knocks at this ungodly hour. Who is this? My own voice emerged a dry rasp. Come to the door, the baritone instructed, smooth as river stones. We need to speak. It's the dead of night. Identify yourself. Just answer the door, Elias. He knew my name. A cold spike drove through my pulse. Legs swung over the bedside, feet finding the complaining floorboards. How do you know my name? I know a great deal, the voice continued, its unnerving serenity intact. I know you're standing beside your bed now. Gray shorts, no shirt, alone. Ice sluiced through my veins. I pivoted, scanning the windows, the slatted blinds offering imperfect privacy against the city's perpetual twilight. Could he see? I retreated instinctively. What is it you want? I fought to keep the tremor from my voice. Open the door, Elias. A matter of significant importance requires discussion. I'm dialing 911. No, the voice countered, still eerily level. You won't. Because doing so means forfeiting any chance of learning what became of Clara. Clara, my sister, vanished 3 years ago. 6 months of fruitless searching before the police files gathered dust. Nothing. My hands began to shake. What could you possibly know about Clara? Everything. Open the door, and the truth is yours. I moved to the bedroom threshold, peering down the abbreviated hallway toward the apartment's entrance. Darkness reigned, save for the faint outline of the front door, limned by the security lighting bleeding under and around it. How can I be sure you're even out there? My question felt thin, brittle. This isn't some monstrous prank. 3 sharp, definitive raps echoed against the wood. Knock, knock, knock. The concussion made me flinch. Does that suffice? The voice inquired through the phone. My mouth was parchment. The sound hadn't come through the receiver. It had reverberated from my actual door. He was there. Barefoot, I stepped into the hall, the floor cool against my skin. The phone felt slippery, coated in a sheen of anxious sweat. Tell me what you know about Clara, I demanded, trying to project authority I didn't feel. Now, or the police get the call. The window is closing, Elias. 30 seconds to open this door, or I depart, and the knowledge of Clara's fate goes with me. How do I know you're not fabricating this? 25 seconds. Give me something. Proof. The day she disappeared. A green sundress. Sandals. Silver. Around her neck, a delicate silver chain. A butterfly pendant. Your mother's gift for her 24th vise tightened around my chest, every detail accurate, none ever released publicly. 20 seconds. I drifted closer, my free hand hovering near the deadbolt's thumb turn. 15 seconds. If I open this, how do I know you won't harm me? Had I intended harm, would I have bothered with a phone call? 10 seconds. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic drummer. Clara's face materialized in my mind. Her easy smile, the sound of her laughter. Ghosts haunting 3 years of gnawing uncertainty. 5 seconds. The deadbolt tumbler clicked, the sound obscenely loud in the charged silence. Time expires, Elias. Your decision. My palm, slick with sweat, closed around the doorknob. A deep breath, held, then released. I pulled the door inward. The hallway yawned, empty. Hello. Stepping over the threshold, I scanned left, then right down the dimly lit corridor. Vacant. Silent. Behind you, the voice murmured, impossibly close, directly in my ear. I spun, the phone tumbling from my grasp, clattering onto the floorboards. A man occupied my living room, tall, wide in the shoulders, clad in a black suit of expensive cut. His face was sharp-featured, clean-shaven. A smile touched his lips but failed to ignite his eyes. How did you... I began, bewildered. Fire escape, he cut in smoothly. Your bedroom window latch was undone. Negligent, Elias. Terribly negligent. I edged back toward the open doorway. He advanced a single step. Don't flee, he advised. You'll want to hear this. Stay where you are. His hand moved toward his inner jacket pocket. I braced, expecting metal. Instead, he produced a phone. Not a sleek modern device, but an antiquated flip phone. He thumbed it open, pressed a key. Clara's voice, fractured by tears, filled the small apartment. Elias, if you're hearing this. A sob tore through her words. I'm sorry. So incredibly sorry. I never wanted any of this. You have to. He snapped the phone shut, silencing her plea mid-sentence. Recorded 2 days after her disappearance, he stated flatly. Care to hear the remainder? My legs felt like waterlogged timber. I found the wall, leaned against it for support. Who are you? Someone acquainted with the true narrative. He slid the device back into his jacket. Someone who can provide resolution. But first, we must address what you're prepared to offer for those answers. What do you mean? Your sister unearthed something she shouldn't have. Something substantial. The parties involved couldn't risk exposure. But they didn't extinguish her life, Elias. She lives. The room tilted. I slid down the wall, landing heavily on the floor. Where is she? That, he said, walking to my couch and seating himself with casual ownership, crossing one leg over the other, is intricate. Her captors are influential, well-connected. Extraction will be neither simple nor inexpensive. You're asking for money? In time. Initially, however, I require your assistance. A minor service, one might call it. What sort of service? He reached into his jacket once more. This time, an envelope emerged. Your position at the bank grants you access to certain ledgers, client data, transaction logs, wire transfer details. A cold dread pooled in my stomach. I can't provide that. It's illegal. More illicit than unlawful entry into a private dwelling after midnight. The chilling smile returned. We all transgress, Elias. The pertinent question is our motivation. Your transgression will be in the service of saving your sister's life. He extended the envelope. I made no move to accept it. How do I know she's truly alive? That recording, it could be years old from before. Check your phone. I retrieved my fallen smartphone. A new message notification glowed from an unknown sender. I tapped it open. A video file, 10 seconds brief. Clara. Seated in a featureless room, white walls stark behind her. In her hands, she held today's newspaper, the headline visible. She looked exhausted, thinner, but undeniably alive. She spoke my name, then stated the current date. My hands shook so violently I nearly dropped the phone again. Filmed 4 hours ago, the man remarked conversationally. A live video conference can be arranged, should further validation be necessary. But first, accept the envelope. Slowly, unsteadily, I rose. My legs felt alien, detached. I crossed the room and took the offered envelope. Inside, a list. Names intertwined with account numbers. What do you need me to do? Penetrate these accounts. Compile every transaction exceeding $50,000 within the past year. Dates, sums, destination accounts. You have 48 hours. Bank security protocols. They flag anomalous access patterns. But you manage substantial portfolios. Reviewing transaction histories is routine for you. Prudence ensures anonymity. He stood, smoothing his jacket. One final stipulation, he added. Resist any inclination toward cleverness. No digital breadcrumbs for rescuers. No alerts to authorities. Any such attempt and Clara vanishes anew. This time, irrevocably. He walked to my front door. I watched him go, paralyzed. 48 hours, he reiterated. I will contact you with delivery protocols. Oh, and Elias, he paused, turning back. Secure that bedroom window latch. One never knows who might fancy a nocturnal visit. The door clicked shut behind him. I stood alone in my living room, the envelope a lead weight in my hand, the frantic rhythm of my own heart loud in my ears. My phone vibrated. Another text. Same unknown source. A different video clip of Clara. This one raw, tears streaming down her face as she pleaded for help. The timestamp confirmed it was recorded mere moments ago. I collapsed onto the couch, the envelope crackling in my grip. The list of account numbers swam before my tear-blurred vision. Somewhere distant, a siren wailed its mournful song. The defunct air conditioner gave a final, pathetic sputter. Dawn remained 3 hours off. In 48 hours, I would either possess the data this man demanded, or Clara would be lost to me forever. My laptop flared to life. I logged into the secure bank portal. The account numbers on the paper stared back, accusingly. Each keystroke felt like a descent, another step onto a path shrouded in shadow. Yet, what alternative existed? The sun began its slow ascent, painting the urban sky in bruised hues. I remained tethered to the machine. Resist any inclination toward cleverness. His words echoed, but cleverness was my trade. Banking security, subterfuge and hidden trails were part of the lexicon. Could I embed a clue, subtle enough to evade detection, yet potent enough for the right eyes? Could I retrieve Clara without capitulating entirely? Or would my gambit seal her fate? The cursor pulsed, awaiting the first string of digits. A ragged breath. I began to type. This was merely the overture. I knew that with chilling certainty. Whatever Clara had stumbled upon, whatever abyss had swallowed her, I was now becoming entangled in its tendrils. The man in the impeccable black suit would return. There would be further demands, deeper compromises. But Clara lived. That solitary truth reconfigured the entire landscape of my world. I replayed the video, freezing the frame on her face. Fear etched her features, yet beneath it, a flicker, resilience, defiance, a spark that suggested she fought on, wherever she was held captive. "I'm coming," I whispered to the pixelated image. "Hold on, Clara. I'm coming." The account records materialized, columns of figures and dates flooding the screen. Somewhere within this sterile cascade of data lay the explanation for my sister's vanishing, and I would unearth it, regardless of the price. Morning light filtered through the blinds, striping the room. Another day dawned over Chicago. Lives resumed their ordinary rhythms. My own ordinary life had detonated at 2:30 a.m. with the ringing of a phone. Now, 47 hours remained, ticking down. Was I prepared to become a felon to save my sister? The answer, I acknowledged with a sinking heart, had never truly been in question. I initiated the download. This was my reality now. May God grant me mercy. Sleep fractured near 2 in the morning, splintered by a raw insistence in my throat. I surfaced from dreams, swung my legs over the bedside, and scrubbed the grit from my eyes. A brief shuffle down the unlit corridor brought me to the bathroom threshold. Water, just a simple glass, perhaps a cool splash against my face. That was the mission. But the mission halted. There, gleaming faintly on the tiled floor, were footprints, damp impressions, slender and unsettlingly narrow, stark against the pale ceramic. Mine. Impossible. I hadn't traversed any water, and solitude was the defining feature of my apartment. No other soul belonged here. I remained rooted, scrutinizing them. They materialized just shy of the basin, charting a path toward the bathtub's white cliff. The small window above the toilet remained latched, the door secured behind me. No damp trail snaked in from the hallway. None originated from some unseen spill. They simply began. Midway into the room, their moisture catching the dim overhead bulb in faint, oily reflections. A current of apprehension, cold and immediate, traced its way up my spine. Cautiously, I advanced, my own bare feet carefully avoiding the aqueous outlines. Breath held captive in my lungs. I listened. The apartment offered only profound silence. Behind me, the corridor was a maw of darkness. Leaning closer, my gaze followed the prints to their terminus, the very lip of the tub. Expecting perhaps a telltale drip, a residual puddle within, I found only bone-dry porcelain. Stillness reigned. A quick pivot, a scan of my own dry soles, confirmation I hadn't unknowingly created them. A light sheen of perspiration slicked the nape of my neck. From the tap, I drew a hasty cup of water, downed it, and retreated. Back in the sanctuary of my bed, I commanded myself to erase the image, to dismiss the anomaly. The following night, the clock's faint glow again registered the same hour. Again, the sandpaper throat. This nocturnal thirst felt alien, unusual, yet I rationalized. Residual salt from dinner. Mere coincidence. Padding toward the bathroom, I froze anew at the entrance. They had returned. The damp, narrow prints shimmered under the low light, identical, yet different. While they still sprang from the vicinity of the sink and aimed for the tub, their orientation had shifted subtly, angled as if the unseen walker had paused, turned slightly before proceeding. Ears straining, I perceived something else this time. A sound, barely audible, less a noise than a vibration in the air. A low, resonant hum, perhaps a muted, tuneless song, emanating from within the room, yet its source remained elusive. A palpable chill descended, tightening the skin across my back, raising goose flesh. My pulse quickened, a frantic drummer against my ribs. I stretched a hand toward the sink, fingertips brushing the cool, dry porcelain. I traced the grout lines on the floor, dry, utterly dry, save for the glistening intrusions. Attempting to follow their path more closely, stepping nearer the tub, intensified the coldness at the back of my neck. The humming deepened, became more present, twisting my stomach into a knot. I backed away, escaping the room's strange gravity, and sought refuge once more in my bedroom. Sleep now a distant shore. My thoughts snagged on those inexplicable, wet marks. Night the third, I armed myself with foresight. Before surrendering to sleep, I meticulously dried the bathroom floor with a thick towel, ensuring every tile gleamed under the light, arid and clean. Windows were verified locked, the apartment's perimeter secured. I lived utterly alone. No spare key existed beyond my own keyring. I programmed my phone's alarm for 1:30, determined to preempt the thirst, to witness the floor in its pristine state. The digital chime pierced the quiet, and I crept, shadow-like, down the hall, leaving lights extinguished. Flicking on the bathroom switch, my breath hitched. There they were, wet, distinct, shining defiantly on the meticulously dried surface. Crouching, I extended a hesitant finger, touching the edge of one print. Cold. Not fresh spilled water cold, but the deep chill of liquid that has lingered. Rubbing my fingertips together confirmed the moisture. I brought them to my nose. The scent was neutral, simply water, devoid of odor, chemicals, or any strangeness. A tingling awareness prickled my forearm. The fine hairs stood erect. I listened. The hum returned, quieter now, but a steady, monotonous drone, a single tone suspended in the charged air. Inclining my head toward the bathtub, the sound amplified. A constriction tightened my throat. With a surge of will, I reached out, swept aside the shower curtain. Empty. Dry. My phone's flashlight beam probed every corner, revealing nothing but sterile surfaces. Behind me, the footprints remained, silent witnesses. Turning back, I noticed something new. There were fewer prints than the previous night, and they described a subtle curve, bending around some unseen obstacle before their inevitable conclusion at the tub's edge. A hard swallow, a knot of dread solidifying in my gut. I exited the bathroom, retreating to the living room, where I sat vigil until the first gray light of dawn seeped through the windows, pondering the unsettling calculus of my situation. The fourth night demanded confrontation. I resolved to witness their genesis. Forsaking sleep, I remained awake. The apartment plunged into darkness. Positioned in my bedroom, door ajar, I watched the corridor's shadowed length. The bathroom light stayed off. Its door cracked open just enough to offer a sliver of visibility. Near to, the sound emerged. A delicate plink, plink, like water droplets striking tile. I held my position for several agonizing minutes, sweat blooming on my palms. Then, rising silently, I moved with deliberate slowness down the hall, peering into the bathroom's gloom. The floor near the sink was visibly darker, wet. The footprints had materialized, discernible even without light. My hand found the switch, flooding the room with illumination. An immediate, frigid draft kissed my face. The humming resonated, louder now, its pitch subtly altered. Hesitantly, I reached a hand into the room, but the instant my foot crossed the threshold, a violent shiver coursed up my spine. My breathing grew shallow, a frantic pulse hammered at my temple. I tried to form words, my mouth suddenly arid. "Who's here?" The query emerged as a ragged whisper. Silence answered. The prints remained, steadfastly leading to the tub. My reflection stared back from the mirror, pale and strained beneath the stark light. Leaning over the basin, I twisted the faucet. Water flowed, clear and normal. I splashed some onto my face, glanced back down the empty hallway, then returned my gaze to the footprints, unchanged. My fingers brushed the tub's rim, dry, cold. Seizing a towel, I knelt and began to wipe at the prints. The terry cloth readily absorbed the moisture, erasing the enigmatic marks. Holding the damp towel, I stood, waiting in the sudden profound silence. The humming had ceased. I left the bathroom, retreated to my bed, and sat in the encompassing darkness until morning broke. Subsequent nights became a series of futile experiments. One evening, a sheet of cardboard lay sentinel on the floor. Another, a fine dusting of flour coated the tiles. Yet another, a dry towel occupied the space before the sink. Each dawn brought the same verdict. Around that ungodly hour, thirst would inevitably summon me, and upon entering the bathroom, I'd find the evidence. The cardboard bore two small, sodden patches, perfectly foot-shaped. The flour was disturbed, damply clumped into telltale outlines. The towel displayed wet impressions exactly where feet might fall. Always, they originated near the sink. Always, they terminated at the tub. They never breached the doorway, never hinted at an external origin. It was as if they precipitated from the very air within the room. With the passage of nights, I observed the subtle choreography of their placement. Sometimes angled left, sometimes right, occasionally describing a gentle arc, other times approaching the tub from a slightly different vector. I began documenting these patterns, sketching the bathroom layout, marking each footprint's location, hoping some underlying logic might reveal itself. A week yielded several pages of diagrams, a cryptic collection of non-repeating arrangements, forming shapes devoid of discernible meaning. Frustration mounted, entwined with exhaustion. Sleep became shallow, fractured, leaving behind headaches and a persistent tension knotting my shoulders. Daylight hours were spent enacting normalcy, work, television, meals, a conscious effort to suppress the nocturnal unease. But as evening deepened, apprehension coiled in my stomach. My throat, betraying me, would grow parched at the appointed hour, compelling me toward that unsettling tableau. I considered confiding in a friend, dialing the number only to hang up, stumped by the sheer absurdity of the narrative. Weird plumbing issues, I eventually mumbled during one call. Maybe a leak. The predictable advice followed. Check pipes. Call a plumber. Daytime inspections revealed nothing amiss. Pipes were sound, fixtures functional, drains clear. No leaks stained the ceiling. No moisture marred the walls. Everything appeared utterly mundane. One night, steeling myself, I planned another confrontation. Alarm set for just before 2. This time, every light in the apartment blazed. Bathroom illumination confirmed. I entered. Phone held aloft. Video recording initiated. Initially, the floor remained blessedly dry. I stood, sentinel-like, camera panning across the tiles. Minutes stretched. Fatigue tugged at my limbs. Leaning against the cool sink, I stifled a yawn. Just as resolve began to fray, the sound returned. That soft, low-frequency hum. Camera instantly directed floorward. Nothing. Then, in the space between heartbeats, perhaps during a blink, they appeared. Instantaneous. Wet footprints, slender and chillingly distinct, leading inexorably to the tub. My heart hammered against my ribs. I recorded, mouth breathing shallowly against the tightness in my chest. Extending my free hand, I probed the air directly above the prints. A distinct pocket of cold, like an invisible draft. The humming intensified. A glance at the mirror, then the ceiling. Nothing. Again, I forced words out. Is someone here? My voice trembled, betraying my fear. No reply, only the persistent drone. The hairs on my arms bristled. Leaning closer, phone held low to capture every glistening detail. I felt that familiar spinal chill and froze. I reached toward the tub. As my fingers neared the porcelain edge, the humming surged, making my ears ring faintly. Retreating brought relief. Approach intensified it. Camera aimed into the basin. Dry. Vacant. I plunged my hand inside. Cold, ceramic, nothing more. Heart racing, breath ragged, I pulled back, panning the camera around the small room, and down at my own feet. My dry soles left no mark. Only those aberrant, aqueous prints remained. Backing out slowly, still recording, I retreated to the living room sofa. Replaying the footage, I zoomed in. The footprints were starkly clear. Pausing, advancing frame by frame, I searched for any flicker, any anomaly beyond the prints themselves. Nothing. Amplifying the audio, I could hear the hum distinctly on the recording. That low, steady tone, but no other sound, no voice, no explanation. I studied the pattern again. This time, they formed nearly a perfect semicircle before halting at the tub. The following nights fell into a grim rhythm. Record, document, analyze. The patterns shifted nightly, curves, zigzags, near straight lines, yet always originating at the sink, always concluding at the tub, never crossing the threshold, never extending beyond the bath's perimeter. I examined the drain, probing for dampness, for any sign of water seeping upward. Logic offered no foothold. The sink functioned perfectly. The drain remained clear, and daylight revealed only normalcy. I began to dread the encroaching darkness, lying awake, staring at the ceiling, anticipating the alarm, knowing what awaited. My hand would shake, reaching for the light switch. My mouth would parch preemptively. My shoulders would lock with tension. I tried layering clothes against the chill, but the cold remained tethered to the prints, an objective reality I felt whenever I drew near. Eventually, I abandoned attempts at communication. Whatever entity or phenomenon was responsible offered no dialogue, left no trace beyond the damp impressions and the resonant hum. It confined itself to the bathroom, to those specific hours. I tried boycotting the room entirely, but thirst was a relentless warden. I attempted to ignore the prince, dashing in for water, averting my gaze. They persisted. Turning off the light and returning moments later only ensured their reappearance. Leaving a towel preemptively resulted only in a towel bearing wet footprints. No action deterred them. No inaction prevented them. They never faded naturally, remaining until physically wiped away. A silent, recurring insistence of presence. Weeks blurred into a month, then more. My nerves frayed thin. I took to leaving the bathroom light burning all night, the door wide open, hoping to catch some movement in the corridor. Nothing. The prince only ever manifested upon my entry, never under direct sustained observation. They seemed to materialize in the instant my attention lapsed, the fraction of a second I looked away or blinked. I tried using a mirror angled from the hallway. Futile. The moment direct sight was broken, they appeared. It felt deliberate, mocking, yet offered no proof beyond the prints themselves. My linen closet now housed a growing collection of towels, marked with those damp, foot-shaped stains. Hours of video footage documented their inexplicable appearance. The recorded hum remained monotonously consistent. No explanation presented itself. No source was ever found. No entity revealed. Just the wet footprints on the floor, commencing their journey at the sink, ending it at the tub, their nightly path subtly altering, sketching patterns I could not decipher, leaving behind a bone-deep chill I couldn't shake. I recount this because options have dwindled. I remain in this apartment. The footprints continue their nightly visitation. The chill still greets me when I cross the bathroom threshold after midnight. That low humming still vibrates in this air when I venture too close. I don't understand the why of it, the meaning behind it. They offer no cessation, no clarification. My ritual remains. Wipe them away. Hope for a night of absence. Thus far, hope remains unrewarded. They always return. Silence fell, thick and sudden, the moment the television's glow vanished. It was then, on a Wednesday night steeped in quiet, that the sound began. A faint, insistent tapping from the wall anchoring the living room sofa. Not aggressive, but rhythmic. A delicate percussion against the plaster. A cold fist clenched low in my belly. I rose, drawn by an unease I couldn't name, and crossed the room. My ear pressed to the cool paint. The vibration traveled faintly into bone. Tap, tap, tap. Hesitantly, I echoed the rhythm with my own knuckles. Silence answered, a brief, held breath. Then it resumed, a seeming acknowledgement. My pulse hammered a frantic beat against my ribs. 3 years I'd inhabited these walls. 3 years of unremarkable silence, now fractured. I lingered there, mind scrambling for logic. Plumbing tremors, frayed wiring sparking erratically. A creature, disoriented and trapped. Yet the sound held no frantic scrabble, no desperate scurrying. It possessed the distinct timbre of a knuckle, rapping patiently. Shoving the heavy sofa aside revealed only unblemished wall. I palpated the surface, searching for give, for fissures, for any hint of anomaly. Nothing. Night after night, the summons returned. Never during the glaring hours of day, or perhaps merely lost in its clamor. Only darkness seemed to coax it forth. I took to sleeping on the sofa, a sentinel waiting. Around 11, reliably, it would begin. That soft, steady cadence. I'd lean close, straining to pinpoint its origin. High on the wall, it seemed, near the ceiling's edge. An attic check was impossible. Above the living room lay only roof tiles and sky. I fought the urge to listen, yet each tap slicked my palms with sweat, dried the moisture from my throat. A week dissolved under this nightly siege before I remembered the house plans, tucked away since the purchase. Retrieved from a closet's dusty archive, the brittle sheafs unfolded across the kitchen table. My finger traced familiar lines: living room, kitchen, bedroom, bath, the connecting artery of the hall. All corresponded to the house I knew, but one sheet, older, ink faded, dated half a century past, showed something more. Behind the living room wall, sketched in precise, architectural lines, lay an extra chamber, a small rectangle accessed by what appeared to be a slender doorway. The newer documents were blank in that space, showing only the exterior wall. I stared, comparing the schematics. The listed dimensions, the current measurements. A slight discrepancy, previously ignored, now screamed significance. This older map insisted upon a hidden pocket, excised from later records. Disquiet coiled within me. Rubbing tired eyes, I sought rational explanations. A renovation sealing off unusable space. But why? Carrying the fragile blueprint to the living room, I held it against the wall, aligning landmarks, trying to project the phantom doorway onto the solid plaster. The tapping was absent now, yet I knew the spot. It corresponded precisely with the section of the upper wall, near the ceiling, if the old plan held true. From the garage, I fetched a torch and a stepladder. Ascending, I rapped gently near the ceiling. One area resonated differently, a hollow note beneath the plaster. Applying more pressure, I felt it. A subtle yield, a board not quite secured. Descending for a small hammer and a flat pry bar, I climbed again, heart thrumming a heavy bass line against my sternum. My chest felt tight, constricted by anticipation, by dread. What lay dormant behind the facade? A tentative strike with the hammer dislodged a chunk of plaster. Dust rained down, stinging my eyes, powdering my hair. Wiping my face on my sleeve, I angled the torch beam into the breach. Wood. Old beams, darker planks laid across them. I worked carefully, widening the aperture, pulling down more plaster and debris. The air that sighed out was ancient, desiccated. And then, revealed beneath the splintered lath, the unmistakable edge of a doorframe. Narrow, wooden, obscured for decades. The timber looked dark, almost petrified. Reaching into the dusty cavity, my fingers brushed against something small, metallic. A doorknob. It turned with surprising ease, but the door itself met resistance. Using the pry bar, I strained against the obstructing planks, wrestling them free with grunts and the screech of protesting nails. Finally, two boards gave way. The hidden door swung inward into darkness. Higher on the ladder now, I thrust my head and the torch through the opening. A small cell materialized in the beam, perhaps 8 feet square. Utterly bare, save for one object on the far wall. A single candle, nestled in a simple metal sconce, its flame burning with unwavering intensity. No windows punctuated the walls, no wires snaked across the rough-hewn surfaces, just that solitary, impossible light. A chill, distinct from the night air, brushed my face. The smell was thick, cloying, damp earth and time itself. the silence. Absolute. The tapping had ceased. Swallowing against a constricted throat, I maneuvered through the narrow opening, stepping onto the floor of the hidden room. It was cramped, the ceiling oppressively low. Bare wooden walls enclosed me. The candle remained the sole illumination. My gaze swept the small space, landing on something beside the impossible flame. A painting. A portrait. Of me. My face stared back but warped into a grotesque, fixed grin. The eyes stretched unnaturally wide, the mouth pulled taut in a silent scream of mirth. It was undeniably me, clad in the very shirt I wore at that moment. A crushing weight settled on my chest. Sweat bloomed cold on my skin. My legs felt unsteady, waterlogged, as I approached the portrait. My own breathing sounded loud, shallow in the confined space. The paint. It looked wet, freshly applied, the strokes smooth and deliberate. I reached out, trembling fingers brushing the rough wood of the frame. The candlelight flickered across the painted surface, lending the rictus a semblance of movement. I snatched my hand back. Illusion. Surely. The light playing tricks. I focused on the candle. Thick, white wax. Yet none seemed to have dripped. The flame, steady and bright, defied physics. Holding my hand above it, I felt warmth, but not the searing heat expected. Tentatively, heart pounding in my ears, I tried to pinch the flame between my fingers. My hand shook violently. My fingertips closed around the wick, enveloped the light. Warmth, yes, but no burn. It persisted, unharmed. I blew sharply. The flame dipped, danced, and immediately steadied, resolute. I stumbled back, hitting the wall. The impact jarred me. I needed to understand. A sealed room, an unconsuming candle, a portrait of me, Mayo Zain now. I glanced down at my gray t-shirt, touched the familiar fabric. Identical. The painting seemed hours old, yet the air held no scent of fresh oils. Turning, I paced the perimeter of the tiny chamber, rapping on the solid wood walls, running my hands over the coarse grain. No vents, no windows, no other features. Only the open doorway back to my world, framing the jagged hole in my living room ceiling. Beyond the familiar darkness, punctuated only by the torchlight and this eerie, constant flame. A profound sense of trespass washed over me. My stomach churned. My mouth was parchment. I had to remove it. The painting. Approaching it again, I gripped the frame with both hands and lifted. It came away easily from the wall, revealing only more aged wood behind it. Cradling it against my chest, I felt an odd resistance, a weight disproportionate to its size. My legs trembled as I backed towards the opening, carefully negotiating the ladder rungs down into the living room. Leaning the portrait against the wall, I bathed it in the torch beam, then flicked on a nearby lamp. It remained unchanged, my face stretched in that agonizing parody of a smile. It wasn't joyful. It looked strained, like muscles locked in an unbearable posture. I touched my own face, neutral, jaw tight. No signature adorned the canvas. Just me. Gray shirt, jeans, captured in this disturbing moment. Rationality strained against the impossible. A prank. Some elaborate legacy left by a previous owner. But the timing, the clothes, the ever-burning candle. How? Pacing the living room floor, breath coming hard, I kept glancing back at the canvas, willing it to shift, to offer a clue. It remained static, mocking, I climbed the ladder again, peering back into the secret room. The candle burned on, its flame perhaps wavering slightly now in the draft from the open door. The space felt even more desolate without the painting. Listening intently, I heard only silence. The tapping was gone. I swept the torch beam into every corner. Nothing. Just wood, low ceiling, and the inexplicable candle in its sconce. Stepping back inside, I tried to dislodge the candle itself. Gripping the waxy base, I pulled. It held fast, the metal holder firmly anchored. Twisting yielded nothing. The flame remained indifferent. My throat tightened. Touching the flame again confirmed its strange nature. Warm air. Nothing more. Defeated, I retreated, the tension knotting my shoulders into painful lumps. In the kitchen, I placed the painting face down on the table. The back was unremarkable. Wood frame, stretched canvas. I ran a finger along the edge, picked at a corner. Solid paint. Holding it, breathing through my mouth, sweat cooling on my back, I felt trapped. I needed a towel, needed to think. I grabbed a dishcloth, pressing its cool dampness to my forehead. The blueprints lay on the counter. The old one insistent on the room's existence. The new ones erasing it. Whom could I call? What could I possibly say? Returning to the living room, kitchen light extinguished, I aimed the torch at the ceiling breach. The door stood open, the small flame visible within, dancing slightly. A sudden, fierce compulsion seized me. Close it. Seal it away. Pretend it never happened. I ascended the ladder a final time. Carefully, clumsily, I replaced the wooden planks, hammering a few nails back into place. From the garage, I retrieved a spare piece of drywall and covered the ragged opening. A temporary measure needing plaster, paint, finesse later. For now, concealment was paramount. Descending, my gaze fell upon the painting, still leaning against the wall. That grin. It burrowed under my skin. Turning it to face the plaster, I banished the image from sight. Silence returned, heavy and watchful. No tapping. Just the house settling around me. I went to the bathroom, splashed cold water on my face, met my own reflection in the mirror. Tired eyes, red-rimmed, jaw clenched. Normal. Back on the sofa, I surveyed the scene. The wall, quiet. The ceiling patch, an ugly scar. The reversed painting, a silent accusation. My fingers traced damp paths on my jeans. I sat for a long time, suspended in the aftermath, waiting. Nothing stirred. Eventually, I rose and carried the painting to a hall closet. For a moment, I stood there in the darkness, holding it, tempted to discard it, yet fearing repercussions I couldn't fathom. Finally, I shoved it behind stacks of boxes, closed the door firmly, and returned to the living room. The rest of the night bled away in wakeful vigilance. Each creak of the old house, each hum of the refrigerator, seemed amplified, laden with potential menace. Sweat beaded on my palms. When I closed my eyes, the painted grin flashed behind my lids. Dawn found me unrested. I opened the closet. The painting remained, unchanged. My face, locked in its rictus. I shut the door quickly, walking away. I would dispose of it later, I told myself. I would forget the hidden room, the impossible flame. But the knowledge lingered, a cold certainty. Behind the wall, behind the patch, in the absolute dark, the candle burned on. Even now, the memory prickles, The first encounter with her. Perched atop a cardboard sarcophagus in the Stygian gloom of my mother's storage room, she radiated a palpable wrongness. Light, thin and weak from a solitary ceiling bulb, snagged on the violent violet of her hair, making it glimmer unnaturally in that stagnant corner. My sister Clara, chasing a new career in some distant city, had bequeathed us these monuments of forgotten life. My task was simple: excavate, catalog, impose order. Yet the instant my fingers closed around the doll's stiff form, a cold knot cinched itself low in my gut. She was a relic, perhaps, some punk effigy dredged from the dregs of the 90s. Miniature chains coiled around her arms like captive serpents. Her body was encased in stark black vinyl. Her face bore the mask of heavy, theatrical makeup. But something deeper felt discordant. Was it the rictus grin stretched across painted lips, a smile devoid of mirth, or the eyes, vacant and flat, the color of dead ash? Whatever it was, it pressed upon my chest, a sudden, unwelcome weight. I dialed Clara. Her voice came through the line, thin and preoccupied, the doll a hazy footnote in her memory. A gift, she murmured, from someone she'd known. A friendship that had curdled into animosity. The giver, Clara offered vaguely, was peculiar. She hadn't wanted the effigy shadowing her new apartment. Do with it what you will, she'd concluded. Disconnecting the call, a tremor of pure dread shivered through me. Why? Dolls held no particular horror for me, not usually. Yet my hands felt unsteady as I positioned the figure on a dusty shelf within the storage room's confines. No time for this now. I retreated, the click of the lock echoing slightly too loud in the quiet house. Sleep fractured around 3 in the morning. I surface easily, often drifting awake for water, for the small reassurances of a silent house. But this sound jolted me upright, heart hammering against my ribs. A frantic skittering, like fingernails clawing desperately at wood. My first thought, Buster, our dog, exploring where he shouldn't. But no, he was a fixture in the living room at night. I hadn't heard the familiar click of his claws on the floorboards. I sat rigid, straining my ears. The sound emanated unmistakably from the direction of the storage room. My mind scrabbled for logic, settling foundations, a branch rapping against the siding. But then, a low whine drifted from the hallway. Buster. Easing out of bed, I cracked open my door. He stood silhouetted against the dim hall light, ears flattened, body taut, gaze fixed on the corridor leading to the forbidden room. He wouldn't move, a statue carved from fear. I crept forward, the hallway runner muffling my steps. The light felt inadequate, casting long, dancing shadows. I kept glancing back, but Buster remained rooted near my doorway, a silent, trembling sentinel refusing to advance. The instant my palm touched the cool metal of the storage room doorknob, the scratching ceased. Silence flooded the space. I turned the key, flicked the switch. The naked bulb flared, illuminating the cramped interior. At first glance, nothing amiss. Boxes squatted patiently. Shelves held their burdens. My pulse throbbed in my ears. I swept my gaze across the room, probing every shadow. And then I saw it. The doll, seated on its shelf, precisely as I'd left it. I stared, bracing for a flicker of movement, a subtle shift. Nothing. Only that static, painted grin. Stepping closer, I tentatively touched one plastic arm. Cold, rigid, inert. Just plastic. I stood there for a long minute, the only sound my own ragged breathing. No more skittering, no whispers, no alien sounds. I backed out, locking the door again, forcing the unease down. Morning arrived. I mentioned the scratching to my mother, Iris. Worry flickered in her eyes, quickly masked. Mice, perhaps, she suggested. In the walls. This old house creaks and groans, you know. But a thorough search revealed no telltale droppings, no gnawed edges. I let it drop, unwilling to amplify her concern. Yet the image of the doll resonated persistently in the back of my mind. Buster provided his own silent testimony, resolutely avoiding that entire wing of the hallway. Any attempt to coax him near was met with whimpers and a hasty retreat. Several days drifted by uneventfully. I immersed myself in routine, pushing the doll to the periphery of my thoughts. Clara called, chattering about her new life, the city's pulse, workaday triumphs, all blessedly normal. Then, perhaps a week after the initial discovery, armed with broom and dustpan, I ventured back into the storage room. A cleaning impulse, a need to reclaim the space. I flipped the light switch, and my breath caught. Above the shelf where the doll resided, dark smudges marred the wall like ghostly fingerprints left by soot or ash. Frowning, I touched the marks. Dry, flaky, a black powder rubbing off onto my skin. It felt wrong. Iris, I called out. Did you light a candle in here? Burn anything? Her negative reply was immediate. She rarely entered the room. Dragging over a stool, I examined the wall more closely. Not scorch marks, not really. No blistering paint, just this strange, dusty residue. It wasn't smoke damage. It felt more deliberate, like deliberate smudges. My gaze dropped. The doll wasn't sitting anymore. It lay face down on the floor, wedged against the baseboard in the corner. An awkward, discarded posture, as if flung there. Yet the surrounding boxes stood undisturbed. A chill traced its way up my spine. I knew, with absolute certainty, I had left it seated upright on the shelf days before. Nothing could have logically knocked it down. The shelf was stable, far from the door, no windows nearby, and no one else had been inside. Iris swore she hadn't touched the thing. My hands trembled as I carefully retrieved the doll, setting it back on the shelf, attempting to balance its unsettling weight. My eyes kept darting towards the open doorway, half expecting it to swing shut on its own volition. It remained stubbornly open. Abandoning my cleaning supplies, I fled the room, the frantic rhythm of my heart loud in the sudden quiet. At the bathroom sink, I scrubbed the black residue from my fingers with fierce intensity. Iris shot me a questioning look as I emerged, but I waved it away. Fine, I muttered, offering no explanation. A pervasive disquiet settled over me for the remainder of the day, a low hum of tension vibrating just beneath the surface of things. Buster became Iris's shadow, refusing point blank to patrol his usual hallway territory. Sleep refused me that night. I tossed, turned, the doll's face imprinted on the darkness behind my eyelids, the kohl-rimmed eyes, the shock of violet hair, the vacant stare. Around midnight, defeated, I padded out to the living room, seeking refuge in the flickering blue light of the television. Some mindless show droned on. My eyelids felt heavy as lead, but my nerves remained taut, frayed. Perhaps half an hour passed before a distinct sound sliced through the manufactured noise, the faint squeak of a door hinge. I muted the volume, listening intently. Not my bedroom door nor the bathroom. It sounded unnervingly like the storage room door, the one I knew I had locked. My throat constricted. Rising silently, I tiptoed towards the hallway. Buster was conspicuously absent. Peering around the corner, my gaze fixed on the storage room door. It appeared shut, immobile. Yet I could have sworn. The doorknob gleamed innocuously under the hall light. Compelled, I approached, reached out, tested it, locked solid. Wood contracting in the cool night air, I told myself fiercely. Just the house settling. Retreating to the living room's artificial glow, I turned the television volume back up, a flimsy shield against the encroaching unease. Morning light brought resolve. Enough was enough. I called Clara again, pressing her, needing more than vague recollections. Annoyance tinged her voice this time. The woman, the giver, someone from the fringes of a music scene years ago. She elaborated reluctantly. A dramatic falling out, accusations, erratic behavior. Details remained elusive, lost to time, but the ending was unequivocally bitter. Had the doll felt strange when she received it? Could it have been altered? A pause stretched across the line. Clara admitted she didn't know, but yes, the gift had felt wrong, heavy with unspoken sentiment. She'd never liked it, hence its perpetual confinement in a box. An apology finally surfaced, thin but sincere, for leaving it in my care. Hanging up, a cold anger mingled with the persistent dread. I found Iris, stated my intention flatly. The doll had to go. Relief washed over her features. While hesitant to discard a gift, she conceded Buster's persistent fear, and the inexplicable soot were too unsettling to ignore. Taking a deep breath, I grabbed a black trash bag and marched back to the storage room. It sat on the shelf, upright this time, turned slightly, almost imperceptibly, towards the door, as if watching, waiting. My heart gave a painful lurch, but I forced my steps forward, snatched the doll, thrust it into the bag, and knotted the top with decisive finality. This required distance, true removal. I informed Iris I was driving to the refuse site outside town. She nodded, her approval palpable. Walking to the car, the bag in my arms felt abnormally dense, possessed of a strange, unsettling weight. I dismissed it, popped the trunk, and deposited the bundle inside. The drive was a white-knuckled affair. Each bump in the road elicited a rustle from the trunk, magnified in the tense silence. I cranked the radio, needing noise to drown out the insidious sounds in my own shallow breathing. Perspiration beaded on my forehead despite the air conditioning's cool kiss. Finally, the local dump. Little more than a scarred patch of earth where unwanted things came to die. I parked, released the trunk lid, seized the bag. Striding towards a hulking metal dumpster, I swung the bag high and let it fall. It landed with a hollow, metallic thump. I lingered for a heartbeat, pulse erratic, half convinced the bag would twitch, would somehow resist its oblivion. It lay still. Back in the car, I drove home, eyes flicking compulsively to the rearview mirror, irrationally expecting to see violet hair or a painted grin reflected in the glass. My chest remained tight. I consciously forced slow, even breaths. By the time I pulled into the driveway, exhaustion had settled deep in my bones. Done? Iris asked quietly. Yes, I confirmed. A small, relieved smile touched her lips. Good. Perhaps that will be the end of it. I clung to that hope. That night, sleep came easily, deeply. No phantom scratching disturbed the peace. No doors whispered open in the dark. Buster resumed his hallway patrols without hesitation, even pausing to sniff curiously at the storage room door before trotting away, tail held high. A morning inspection of the room revealed nothing but dusty shelves and Clara's forgotten boxes. No soot, no displaced objects. A profound lightness filled my chest, the tangible lifting of a burden. Days have passed since the disposal, settling into a comfortable rhythm. Clara called. I told her the doll was gone. A nervous laugh crackled through the line. Probably for the best, she'd conceded. The scratching remains absent. Buster is himself again, yet the memory, that lurid hair, the vacant eyes, retains its power to disquiet. I possess no grand theory, no explanation rooted in the mundane. I only have the stark evidence of my senses, the scraping sounds, the phantom soot, the doll's inexplicable migrations. It felt intrinsically wrong, violating the natural order of things. I've discarded countless objects in my life, but none carry that same charge, that same resonant wrongness. I'm simply grateful for its absence. I told Iris, should anything remotely similar ever cross our threshold again, it meets immediate eviction. She readily agreed. Superstition isn't my usual inclination, but some experiences require no further proof of forces beyond easy comprehension. For now, the storage room is just a room. Buster passes without fear. Sleep is uninterrupted. Life is blessedly, fragilely calm. That is enough. I require no deeper meaning, no final revelation. I am finished with the doll. I can only hope, fervently, that it is finished with me. So concludes the chronicle of my unraveling. Never did I conceive that a solitary furnishing could compel me to doubt the very fabric of my perception. Yet here I find myself, circling my own sitting room, casting furtive, distrustful gazes toward a venerable armchair, as though anticipating its sudden, animate lurch. My pulse hammers a frantic rhythm whenever proximity becomes unavoidable. A primal dread persists that unseen fingers might close around my ankle. I acquired that armchair at auction, a consequence of my penchant for collecting relics of the past, little imagining it would metastasize into the epicenter of my disquiet. Still, the evidence of my senses, the things witnessed and felt since its induction into my home, cannot be rationally dismissed. Something is profoundly awry. My initial encounter occurred a fortnight past. I was exploring a hushed dispersal of someone's earthly possessions with my friend, Leo. Antiques draw me. They possess a reassuring solidity, tangible echoes of bygone lives. This chair, however, commanded attention. Its velvet the color of dried blood, worn thin by time. Its wooden arms polished to a soft gleam by countless hands. I recall noting frayed threads along the cushion's welt, and carved legs bearing the patina of decades, perhaps centuries. The auctioneer murmured of its late 19th century origins, likely continental European, sufficient detail to ignite a collector's spark. My paddle lifted, a modest sum was offered, and it became mine with surprising ease. Transported home, I situated it near the hearth in my sitting room, an intimate space, perhaps bordering on cluttered with other accumulated fragments of history. The armchair projected an unexpected invitation to repose, despite its advanced age. Its crimson nap held a subtle luster beneath the overhead lamp, the wear on the armrests conferring character. Initially, pride swelled within me. After a cursory dusting, I settled into its embrace, tilting my head back, endeavoring to appreciate the new acquisition. That was the precise moment an icy tendril of air caressed the nape of my neck, sharp as a sudden draft from an unseen aperture. Rising, I methodically inspected every window, finding each securely latched. The room's ambient temperature remained constant. A rogue current, I reasoned, or perhaps a trick of frayed nerves. I resolved to disregard it. Yet, over the ensuing days, each instance of occupying the armchair brought the return of that glacial whisper against my neck. I would twist, seeking a gap in the casement, a misdirected vent, but invariably found nothing. Soon, a deeper unease began to permeate my quiet moments, whether reading or observing the television. The palpable certainty of unseen scrutiny descended, the conviction that someone stood just beyond my peripheral vision. A swift turn always revealed emptiness. My epidermis tightened into a field of goose flesh. A clammy moisture slicked my palms. Respiration grew shallow and quick. Periodically, I'd spring up, conducting a full visual sweep of the room, desperate for reassurance. The culmination of that first week brought a night that nearly propelled me to haul the offending object out into the street. I sat attempting to shed the day's fatigue. A knot of tension resided between my shoulder blades. Leaning forward, I massaged the back of my neck. Abruptly, a distinct, gentle weight settled upon the chair's crest, as if a palm rested there. I launched myself upward, heart seizing, and witnessed the armchair rock back on its hind legs, a breath-stopping hesitation, before settling forward again with a soft sigh of wood. That impossible motion sent a visceral shockwave through me. My chest constricted. A hot flush of pure terror bloomed across my face. Sleep that night was a fractured, haunted affair. My gaze continually drawn to the chair, dimly visible from my bedroom doorway. Morning found me resolved to undertake a thorough examination. Wrestling it onto its side, I scrutinized the undercarriage, the springs, the stuffing, anticipating the mundane detritus of age. A stray tack, a fluff of desiccated horsehair. Instead, snagged within a coil spring, I discovered a swatch of coarse, dun-colored fabric, akin to rough-spun linen, entirely incongruous with the crimson velvet. It bore peculiar, deep stains, resembling greasy smears more than anything organic. Certainly not the telltale rust or brown of dried blood, yet profoundly disturbing. Holding that small scrap, I pondered its provenance. A remnant of earlier upholstery, perhaps a fragment belonging to a previous owner. Its texture was peculiar, possessing an odd rigidity, as if once saturated and left to dry, unyielding. I sealed the fragment in a plastic bag, consigning it to a drawer. Contacting the auction house seemed futile. A flush of foolishness crept up my neck at the thought of inquiring about a bizarre piece of cloth. They likely possessed no answers. This discovery did nothing to alleviate my discomfort. Merely passing the armchair induced a knot of anxiety low in my gut. I persisted in my attempts at self-reassurance, labeling myself jumpy. A few nights later, I invited Leo over, hoping, perhaps, for external validation or dismissal of my fears. We shared pizza and beer, conversation meandering aimlessly. The armchair remained in its customary position by the fireplace. Leo claimed the sofa, I, steeling myself, took the armchair, feigning nonchalance. Initially, normalcy prevailed. Then, perhaps an hour into the evening, that familiar phantom draft kissed my skin. I fought to maintain composure, to sustain the flow of talk, but the fine hairs on my nape lifted in primitive alarm. Leo cast a questioning glance my way, inquiring if I was all right. I managed a nod. Moments later, he excused himself to the restroom. The instant the door clicked shut behind him, a low groan emanated from the armchair, the sound of stuffing compressing under weight. My heart hammered against my ribs. Slowly, deliberately, I rose. As my weight lifted, the chair gave a distinct, deliberate little lurch, forward then back, as if settling after another's departure. Leo re-entered at that exact moment, interrupting my transfixed observation. I pretended to be stretching. He departed later, oblivious, but the conviction that the chair possessed volition lodged itself firmly in my mind. Sleep, once again, proved elusive, my thoughts consumed by that subtle, impossible movement. The following day, I relocated the armchair to a different corner, testing the hypothesis that its position influenced drafts or interacted strangely with the floorboards. The effort was fruitless. The ambiance remained tainted wherever it rested. Proximity bred tension. My posture would stiffen involuntarily, my stomach churn often. It reached the point where I ceased sitting in it altogether. That weekend, engaged in the routine of cleaning, vacuuming carpets, and dusting surfaces, I avoided physical contact with the armchair for as long as feasible. Eventually, necessity dictated moving it to clean beneath. Grasping the wooden arms, I registered the attrition, far deeper than my first assessment. The ridges were burnished by decades of resting limbs, sections chipped away. Then I saw them. A cluster of gouges scored the wood's hidden belly. Frantic, irregular marks like those clawed by desperate fingernails. A wave of nausea washed over me. Tilting the chair onto its back once more for cleaning, I noted the slightly rusted appearance of the springs. No further fabric scraps were visible, yet the memory of the gray swatch lingered. My respiration hitched, and simultaneously, that spectral cold returned, despite the absence of any breeze or cooling system. A frantic scan of the room yielded nothing. Righting the chair, I hastened through the remaining chores, pointedly averting my gaze from the damned thing. Several days passed without significant incident, though I dared not tempt fate by occupying the chair. Returning home late one afternoon, weary and damp from the humid air, I entered the sitting room. The armchair sat askew, subtly repositioned. Had I left it angled thus? I drew closer. A distinct depression hollowed the seat cushion, the unmistakable imprint of recent occupancy. The cloth was wrinkled, and I fancied I detected a faint miasma hanging in the air. Musty, subterranean, chill. A sudden tremor weakened my knees. I stared, half anticipating some overt, impossible movement. Silence reigned, save for the distant hum of the refrigerator. That night, attempting to watch a film from the relative safety of the sofa, subtle groans whispered from the room's shadows. Floorboards, settling furniture, or something else entirely. My auditory senses stretched taut. At one juncture turning, I witnessed the armchair executing a slow, minute oscillation. It possessed 4 static legs, yet it swayed. My pharynx constricted. Rising, I advanced toward it, pulse frantic, palms slick. Standing before it, the motion seemed to cease. Reaching out, I touched the velvet crest. The fabric retained a peculiar coolness beneath my trembling fingers. I gave it a tentative push. It wobbled only in direct response to my force. Nothing more. Frustration warred with fear. Retreating, I ensured every door in the apartment was securely locked before returning to the sofa. Scarcely a minute elapsed before that faint, cold current again brushed the back of my neck. I sprang up, whirling around to see the armchair execute a minute, almost imperceptible adjustment in its position. So slight I might have doubted my vision, yet undeniably present. By bedtime, my nerves were thoroughly frayed. I left a lamp burning in the sitting room, unable to bear the thought of that chair shrouded in complete darkness. Hours passed in wakefulness, eyes fixed on the hallway threshold, straining for any sound, any flicker of movement. Sleep eventually claimed me, though it offered little respite. Morning compelled me to re-examine the fabric scrap. Retrieving the plastic bag from its kitchen drawer confinement, I studied the fragment. It remained the same lifeless gray, marred by those inscrutable stains. They yielded no particular odor, possessed no tackiness. They simply existed, ancient, indelible marks. Could it be part of some concealed recess, or perhaps a fragment shed by a long-departed occupant? An internet search proved fruitless. The notion of submitting it for analysis felt excessive, yet the accumulating strangeness demanded action. I telephoned a local antique restorer, vaguely explaining I possessed an old armchair with some concerns about its integrity. I omitted mention of the unsettling phenomena, merely stating I'd found an unusual piece of fabric and desired a professional opinion. His schedule, he informed me, was congested. Perhaps in a few weeks he could visit. Cold comfort, yet a tangible step. I resigned myself to waiting, clinging to the hope of a mundane explanation. Faulty springs, an anomalous air pocket causing the movements. Deep within, however, resided the conviction that such mechanics failed to account for the glacial breath upon my neck or the pervasive sensation of being watched. In the interim, I began actively avoiding my sitting room. Television viewing migrated to the bedroom. Meals were taken at the small kitchen table. Reading confined to my desk in the spare room. Each passage past the sitting room doorway felt like wading through denser air. The very atmosphere thickened with perceived presence. I could not dislodge the image of an invisible occupant residing within its crimson depths, head swiveling to follow my passage. My pulse would leap. I'd hurry past. One evening, returning from errands, I unlocked my front door and stepped into the foyer. The sitting room lay to my left, unlit save for the jaundiced glow of a street lamp filtering through the window. The armchair's silhouette was initially unremarkable. Then my gaze fixed upon the cushion. It bore a profound concavity, the perfect bowl left by a seated form. I stood rooted in the doorway, my fist clenched around the keys, knuckles blanching. The depression mimicked human contours, yet no figure was visible. I froze. Breath hitched in short, sharp gasps. Panic vignetted my sight. With trembling fingers, I flipped the light switch. The indentation remained. Heart hammering a deafening tattoo against my ribs. I forced myself forward. As I approached, I watched, mesmerized, as the indentation gradually, inexorably, vanished, the fabric plumping itself back to smoothness. The room was utterly silent. My viscera clenched. Backing away, I stumbled into the kitchen, nearly dropping my keys, trapped yet unwilling to flee my own home. After several minutes, clutching a flashlight, I marched back in, sweeping the beam around the armchair. Nothing. It appeared utterly ordinary once more. Since that night, I have been locked in debate, contemplating its exile, its utter destruction. Yet a superstitious fear holds me captive, a dread of reprisal should I attempt its disposal. The assertion reeks of delusion, I concede, but the testimony of my experiences cannot be ignored. The thought of dismantling it, of consigning it to flames, flickers through my mind, yet remains unacted upon. Instead, it remains a silent war of nerves waged in my own home. The restorer's promised arrival remains 7 agonizing days hence. I mark the passage of time, hoping against hope for simple answers. Misaligned springs, trapped air. But instinct whispers otherwise, insists that none of that clarifies the cold breath, the watchful presence. Tonight I intend to occupy the sitting room, bathed in electric light. My phone will rest nearby, poised to capture proof should anything transpire. Evidence, even if only to confirm my own fractured sanity. Right now, as I commit these final words, a subtle disturbance in the room's stillness brushes my back. A familiar prickle crawls across my nape. I resist the urge to turn, yet I perceive its presence, an almost sentient stillness radiating from its place by the hearth. My hands grow damp, my stomach churns with apprehension. I swallow repeatedly against a parched throat. Perhaps it signifies nothing. Perhaps my grasp on reality is loosening. Yet, I know what I have witnessed, what I have felt. That armchair is not merely old. It is freighted with something else. Whatever resides within it, I sense it nearby, observing, attentive, poised. And for the present, it remains within my home. The Wipers waged a futile war against the sky's onslaught, blades slapping rhythmically as Alara strained her eyes against the deluge-streaked glass, hunting for the phantom edges of the road. Hours she'd driven, a frantic flight from the pursuing tempest, yet it clung to her like a shroud. Another jagged fissure of lightning split the heavens, momentarily illuminating a waterlogged landscape and a splintered, faded signpost. Oak Haven, 5 miles. A ragged sigh escaped her lips. Perhaps sanctuary, a motel room to wait out this liquid fury, lay within reach. But as the odometer crept forward, the storm, far from abating, gathered monstrous strength. Rain descended not in drops, but in solid, blinding sheets, shrinking her world to the few feet illuminated by her headlights. Her grip tightened on the steering wheel, knuckles islands of white in a sea of tension. She slowed to a mere crawl, and then she saw it. An unpaved track veering right, swallowed by dripping woods, marked by a second, crudely painted sign. Oak Haven Shortcut. A flicker of hesitation. Folk wisdom teemed with cautionary tales of such routes, paths promising swiftness, but delivering only misdirection and mire. Yet the lure of escaping the treacherous highway, of reaching town now, proved an irresistible siren song. She wrenched the wheel, felt the vehicle lurch and complain as tires met the sodden, uneven earth. For a time, the gamble seemed sound. The track coiled through dense forest, ancient trees forming a dripping canopy that offered scant respite from the downpour. But the deeper she plunged into the woods, the more a creeping disquiet threaded through her exhaustion. The path narrowed, became a rutted channel of mud. No other headlights pierced the gloom. No glint of distant civilization broke the oppressive solitude. Miles dissolved behind her, just as the cold conviction of a terrible error began to crystallize. Her headlamps carved a structure from the darkness ahead. A farmhouse, venerable but cared for, materialized in a clearing. Lamplight, warm and golden, spilled from its windows. A sturdy barn and smaller outbuildings huddled nearby like sleeping beasts. Relief washed over her, potent and sudden. Even if this wasn't Oakhaven, surely its occupants could offer guidance. She navigated the muddy approach, killed the engine, the sudden silence amplifying the storm's roar. Drawing a breath, she launched herself into the rain, a desperate dash to the porch. As her hand lifted to knock, the door swung inward. A man occupied the threshold, tall and spare, his face a map etched by wind and sun. He regarded her with surprise mingled with an unreadable stillness. Suspicion, perhaps. "Something I can do for you." His voice was rough-hewn, like weathered timber. "Forgive me, bothering you so late," Alara managed, a tremor in her voice born of cold and nerves as rainwater soaked through her jacket. "I was trying for Oakhaven. Took a wrong turn somewhere back, I think. Could you possibly tell me the way?" The man's severe expression softened fractionally. "Oakhaven. You're a good ways off, miss. That shortcut road doesn't go through. Hasn't since the floods last spring washed out the bridge." Her fragile hope plummeted. "Oh no, is there? Is there another way? Around?" He shook his head, a slow, final gesture. "Not this. These back lanes turn to rivers when the sky opens up like this. Best you come inside. Wait it out by the fire." Every frayed nerve screamed caution, urged a polite refusal, a retreat back to the uncertain road. But a violent crack of thunder overhead, sharp and close, jolted her. The choice felt less like hers to make. "Thank you," she murmured, stepping past him into the house's unexpected warmth. The interior was deceptively snug, cluttered with a life lived. Mismatched armchairs crowded a worn rug, the walls a collage of sepia-toned photographs and oddly placed farm implements. A rusted scythe here, a horse harness there, seemingly more totems than tools. A fire danced merrily in a stone hearth, its heat a welcome balm. Alara found herself drifting towards it instinctively. "Name's Silas," the man offered, shutting the heavy door, sealing them in. "My wife, Agnes, she's back in the kitchen. Get yourself dry. I'll let her know we've got company." Silas vanished down a shadowed hallway, leaving Alara alone with the crackling fire and the silent watchers on the walls. She peered closer at the photographs. A family stared back. Silas, a woman she presumed was Agnes, and 2 children, a boy and a girl, captured at various stages of youth. Yet, something felt dissonant. Their clothing, their hairstyles. They belonged to another era, decades past. She was squinting at a particularly faded image, trying to resolve the details, when a soft voice startled her. "Supper's near ready. You'll join us, won't you?" Elara turned. A woman stood in the doorway Silas had disappeared through. Like him, she bore the imprint of the elements, but her smile seemed genuine, etched with fine lines. "Oh, I couldn't possibly impose," Elara began. Agnes waved a dismissive hand. "Nonsense. Visitors are rare out this way. A new face at the table is a welcome thing." Drawn by the savory aroma wafting from the kitchen, hunger suddenly sharp and demanding, Elara followed. Silas was already seated at a plain wooden table. Agnes indicated a chair opposite him. As they ate a simple, hearty stew, Elara attempted conversation, but her hosts proved strangely taciturn. They answered her questions with civility, yet volunteered nothing, their words sparse, falling into long, weighted silences. When she inquired about Oakhaven, about neighbors, they exchanged a glance, swift, indecipherable. "Not much to tell," Silas said at length, his gaze distant. "We mostly keep to ourselves." After the meal, Elara's offer to help clear the table was gently rebuffed. "You're our guest," Agnes insisted. "Silas will show you the spare room. You can set out come morning, once the storm breaks." Unease coiled tighter in Elara's stomach as she followed Silas up the creaking stairs. The second floor lay steeped in darkness, pierced only by the narrow beam of the flashlight Silas carried. He led her to a small chamber at the hall's end. "Washroom's just across," he indicated gruffly. "Anything you need, give a shout." He turned to go, his hand on the knob. An impulsive question escaped Elara's lips. "Where are your children?" Silas froze, utterly still. "Children?" "The photographs," Elara clarified, her voice smaller now. "Downstairs. I saw pictures." For a long, suspended moment, Silas remained motionless. When he finally turned back, his face was a mask of shadows in the meager light. "Those pictures," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, strangely soft. "They're very old. Sleep well." The door clicked shut, plunging her into absolute darkness. Her fingers fumbled for a light switch, found one, flipped it. Nothing. The storm must have claimed the power lines, she reasoned, trying to quell the frantic drumming in her chest. She sank onto the edge of the unfamiliar bed, her mind a frantic whirl. Something was fundamentally wrong here, a discordant note beneath the surface of strained hospitality. Outside, the tempest raged unabated, rain drumming a frantic tattoo against the window panes. Morning felt an eternity away, and the prospect of spending the intervening hours within these walls filled her with a nameless dread. Sleep was impossible. Driven by a restless anxiety, Elara slipped out of the room, her phone's flashlight beam cutting a nervous path through the oppressive dark. The old house groaned around her, settling deeper into the stormy night, but otherwise, silence reigned. She crept downstairs, drawn inexorably back to the gallery of photographs. Examined now under the stark, cold light of her phone, their strangeness intensified. The faces within seemed subtly blurred, deliberately indistinct, as if resisting scrutiny. And in every single frame, regardless of the pose, smiles, or pastoral settings, dim, shadowy figure seemed to lurk indistinctly in the background. A floorboard sighed directly behind her. Ilara spun, her breath catching in her throat. Agnes stood there, her features half lost in shadow. "Can't sleep." Her voice was oddly toneless, flat. I'm sorry," Ilara stammered, feeling caught. "I was just looking at the pictures again." Agnes drifted closer, her eyes fixed on Ilara's face with unnerving intensity. "You shouldn't be down here," she stated, the words devoid of inflection. "It isn't safe." "What do you mean?" Ilara asked, taking an involuntary step back. "What isn't safe?" Agnes offered no answer, only continued her slow, silent advance. Ilara backed away further, bumping into something solid. She turned. Silas stood there, blocking the path to the stairs, his expression one of profound weariness. "I'm sorry," he murmured, and the regret in his voice sounded chillingly authentic. "Truly. But you've seen. You understand too much now. We can't let you leave." Panic, cold and sharp, surged through Ilara. She ducked beneath Silas's outstretched arm, lunging for the front door, rattling the handle frantically. Locked. Bolted. She heard them behind her, their footfalls unhurried, deliberate, inevitable. "You don't understand," Agnes was saying, her voice still eerily calm. "We're trying to protect you. This storm, it isn't natural. None of this is." Ilara fled, darting from the living room into the dining area, then the kitchen, testing windows, searching for any egress. Each was sealed tight, immovable. Silas and Agnes followed, never rushing, maintaining a constant, unnerving proximity. "What do you want?" Ilara cried, finally cornered beside the cold hearth in the kitchen. Silas let out a long, slow breath, heavy with ages. "We don't want anything from you. We're trapped, same as you are now. This storm, it never ends. The night, it never truly breaks. We're caught, living this same night again and again. That's impossible," Ilara whispered. Yet even as she denied it, a chilling resonance echoed within her. The pervasive sense of wrongness, the temporal dislocation she'd felt since crossing the threshold. It clicked into place with horrifying clarity. "We thought perhaps we could keep you safe," Agnes added, a flicker of something like sorrow in her shadowed eyes. "Keep you here, spare you what's out there. But it never works. It takes everyone eventually." As if summoned, lightning flared, blindingly bright, bleaching the kitchen in an instantaneous, ghastly white. In that stark, millisecond exposure, Ilara saw Silas and Agnes not as flesh and blood, but as flickering silhouettes, hollow outlines against the sudden glare. When her vision swam back into focus, they were simply gone. The solid walls of the kitchen seemed to waver, the furniture thinning like smoke, the entire house shimmering, insubstantial as a heat haze. She blinked. Suddenly, impossibly, she was back in the driver's seat of her car, parked exactly where she'd stopped on the muddy shortcut track. The relentless drumming of rain had ceased. Through the trees, the first tentative fingers of dawn painted the eastern sky in bruised purples and hopeful golds. Her hands trembled violently as she fumbled the key into the ignition, the engine catching with a reassuring roar. Carefully, agonizingly slowly, she reversed, maneuvering back onto the main paved road. Driving towards the real Oak Haven under a clearing sky, Alara couldn't dispel the icy residue of the night. A terrible escape, but from what? A shared delusion born of storm and exhaustion. A dream, or something far stranger, anchored in that isolated clearing. Certainty remained elusive, yet sometimes, late at night, driving alone through rain-slicked darkness, her rearview mirror momentarily catches the phantom image of a remote farmhouse, warm lamplight spilling invitingly from its windows. And Alara presses down on the accelerator, eyes fixed firmly ahead, always moving forward. Some shortcuts she now knows, carve paths far too deep, and some storms must be weathered utterly alone. Reality possesses seams, moments where the familiar unravels into the unsettlingly strange, and you realize, with a prickle of unease, that you've strayed from charted territory. Such was the sensation that gripped Elias the instant his foot crossed the library's threshold. Not a tangible shift, nothing he could articulate, yet the very air within seemed suspended, taut with anticipation. A wiser man might have retreated. Elias, however, was tethered by curiosity. He'd been threading his way back from some monotonous work engagement, navigating the anonymous arteries of a forgotten hamlet, when the structure snagged his attention. A venerable brick edifice, sequestered on a lane barely wide enough for memory, let alone traffic. Its sign, a ghost of lettering clinging to weathered wood, hinted at library. Dust filmed the windows like cataracts on sightless eyes, suggesting decades of dormancy. Yet, an inexplicable magnetism emanated from its quiet dilapidation. Perhaps the allure of decay, perhaps the bibliophile's instinct. Elias found himself before its entrance, the tarnished handle cool beneath his palm, yielding to his pressure. A groan resonated from protesting hinges as the door swung inward, releasing a plume of scent, the venerable perfume of aged paper, linen's sweet decay mingling with the ghost of lemon oil. Inside, vaulted ceilings soared above towering stacks, crammed with volumes whose spines seemed fused together by time and neglect. Illumination was sparse, provided by scattered lamps casting pools of amber across vacant reading tables. No custodian presided over the checkout desk. No fellow browsers haunted the aisles. Only a profound stillness reigned, punctuated solely by the colossal presence of books. Perfection of a sort. Elias drifted between the monolithic shelves, a phantom presence tracing the contours of cracked leather bindings. His exploration led him, inevitably, it seemed, toward the library's furthest recess. Here, the stacks climbed higher still, plunging the narrow corridor into a deeper twilight. A distinct chill permeated the air, a coldness untouched by the lamp's distant glow. An undeniable wrongness clung to the space, a dissonant note in the library's quiet symphony. Prudence whispered retreat, yet an unseen current pulled him onward, a conviction that something awaited him amidst the gloom. And then it materialized, nestled obscurely on a lower shelf, dwarfed by its imposing neighbors, lay a single volume, small, unadorned, clad in simple black, its spine utterly blank. It radiated incongruity, an anomaly either misplaced or deliberately hidden. He stooped, his fingers brushing the smooth, worn cover. An electric tremor, cold and sharp, jolted up his arm. Hesitation flickered, a brief pause in the face of the unknown, before yielding to the stronger pull of intrigue. Elias drew the book free. He turned it over, seeking some clue. A title, a publisher, a name, but found only the unblemished black, softened by countless touches. Opening it, he anticipated blankness, perhaps decay. Instead, the first leaf bore a stark inscription, penned in elegant, deliberate cursive. Do not read past this page. Not print, but handwriting, a direct, personal address. A faint, incredulous smile touched Elias's lips. An eccentric flourish. A forgotten narrative device. Dismissing it as antiquated theatrics, he complied with his own nature, not the warning. He turned the page. Blank leaves followed, offering a brief reprieve before the script reappeared, scattered like insidious seeds through the pages. Fragments, disjointed and unnerving. You are observed. Then further on, its gaze is upon you. The elegant hand delivered chilling pronouncements. Flee this place. Another urged, before entanglement is complete. The initial amusement curdled into genuine disquiet, a frisson tracing his vertebrae. Yet stopping felt impossible. The book exerted a gravitational force, drawing him into its ambiguous vortex. Tangibly, the ambient temperature dropped. The lamplight seemed to recede, the shadows thickening, coalescing, as if the room itself responded to the unfolding text. He arrived at the final leaf, stark white, save for one word meticulously inscribed in the center, echoing the earlier imperative, but stripped of all politeness. Run. Elias stared, his pulse hammering against his ribs. The atmosphere grew heavy, oppressive, a palpable weight descending. He scanned the cavernous room, suddenly deafened by the profound silence. The ambient creaks and rustles utterly extinguished. That's when the sound reached the stillness, an intimate susurrus, impossibly close, originating just over his shoulder. He went rigid, the book clutched tight. Again, the whisper breathed, sibilant and low, the words indistinct but the proximity undeniable. Heart thudding, Elias pivoted slowly. Nothing, just rows upon rows of silent sentinels, bathed in the inadequate light. Imagination, he insisted internally, the book's bizarre contents seeding paranoia. A strange jest, nothing more. His gaze fell back to the open book, the stark command. Run. Seeming to vibrate on the page. Tremors started in his hands. Snapping the cover shut, he jammed the volume back into its niche. Escape. Now. He turned, his strides quickening toward the entrance, each footfall unnaturally loud in the vacuum of sound. Halfway across the main floor, the whisper returned, louder now, terrifyingly near, articulating a chilling plea. Stay. Elias froze mid-step, breath hitched. The voice wasn't merely behind him. It felt inside his personal space. He forced another slow turn, dread coiling in his gut. Emptiness greeted him again, yet the cold intensified, biting at his skin. Shadows writhed at the periphery of his vision, no longer passive but animate. A primal terror seized him. Rational thought dissolved. He fled. Sheer instinct propelled him, his feet pounding the aged floorboards in a frantic rhythm. The whispering pursued, escalating from plea to desperate command, swirling around him as he burst through the main door. He spilled onto the pavement, the cool evening air a shocking balm against his fevered skin. He leaned against a street lamp, gulping air, heart slamming against his sternum. Behind him, the library stood impassive, a dark monolith whose dusty windows seemed like vacant sockets observing his retreat. The immediate whisper had ceased, the night placidly silent. Yet the sensation of being scrutinized, imprinted on his nerves, remained potent. Elias scrambled into his car, hands unsteady on the wheel, and drove, leaving the forgotten town and its secrets shrinking in his rearview mirror. He never recounted the incident, never revisited that place, but solitude sometimes invites echoes. In the deepest quiet of the night, when the world sleeps, a faint susurrus occasionally brushes against his hearing, or perhaps only his memory, a soft insistence to stay, to return. And the question lingers, cold and persistent. What destiny awaited within those silent walls?